Hello everyone, this is Dr. K. Jagannayaki, Associate Professor in MBA Department, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Dundigal. So today I want to discuss about methods of data collection. So in research process, methods of data collection, it plays a major role. So without data, there is nothing to carry out your research. So in this particular lecture, I would like to discuss about various things like what do you mean by data, what is information, what is the difference between data and information, what are the different types of data sources available. All these things I want to discuss today. So coming to data, what do you mean by data? Data means it is always in unorganized form. Data is a plural word and datum is singular. So which means is known as raw data which is in unorganized form. So that is known as data. So generally during the research study, people they used to collect information by using different types of sources, and that should be in a raw form which do not have any sense. So that is known as data. See, collection of raw or unorganized facts, that is known as data. So data can be in any form, either it may be in the form of text, it may be in the form of observation, it may be in terms of figures, symbols or descriptions about the things or items. So everything is known as data. So the data, whatever we used to collect by using different sources, it may not be any specific purpose and it doesn't have any significance by itself because it never be in an organized form and it is always meaningless. So accurate and timely, specific and organized data, that is known as information, and that is used for a specific purpose which possesses some meaning and relevance. So data, it leads to an increase in understanding and decrease in uncertainty. So what is the purpose of collecting this data and all means? In a research study, so whenever you are going to come out with new facts, theories, solutions, some procedures and all, so during that time we need to collect the data and that data should be analyzed and people can able to understand what is this data and how it is useful and everything so that we can decrease the uncertainty. The next one is information. So the collected data should be processed. So in the process of data, we used to organize the data and classifying the data, and sometimes we used to record in different forms. So that processed data, when you are going to make it a senseful or meaningful data by way of organized things in a proper manner, and there should be some sort of structure you can able to establish for the data, and that is known as information. It provides context for data that enables decision making. So that raw data, it never create any impact on the decision makers. So once it gone through the process, organized and making them into a meaningful information, and that information, it will furnish some knowledge to the decision makers, and using that information, generally in the business, the policy makers, they will make effective decisions, and it is beneficial in providing useful knowledge. So in information, we can able to provide the knowledge which is relevant and which helps in the decision making. So valid information is that which is reliable. What do you mean by reliable? Reliable is that which can be useful. So that data only we use to furnish to the decision makers. and then it is said to be a valid information. So this valid information is useful. So that is the reason the investigator or researcher has to check and verify whether whatever data collected by him, it is going to support the purpose of his study or not. So only that information is said to be a valid information. For example, if you take a single customer sale at a restaurant, it is not known as information, it is just a data. We are going to maintain the details about a single customer, then that is known as only data. But when it becomes an information means when the business is able to identify what is the most popular and what is the least popular dish. That's how it provides some useful information to all the customers in a particular restaurant. Then it differs in level of abstraction. So data, information and knowledge. So these words we used to apply in research study even in our day-to-day life. So where these three they differs. So when you talk about these three, we can see that there should be a similarity, but they are similar up to certain extent, but they differs in level of abstraction. Data is the lowest level of abstraction, information is next level to data, and knowledge it is the highest level of abstraction among the three. So I want to explain this with this example. The height of Mount Everest, so that is so and so meters, like that we used to say that height we can have only some numerical value. So that is known as data. But when it becomes a meaningful information means a book, if you saw a book on like Mount Everest geographical characteristics. So when you compare the height of Everest and the geographical characteristics, so there is some sense, some meaning, whatever data you are going to collect, and that geographical characteristics, whatever you are talking about the Mount Everest, that creates some information, that provides some information. So the next level is like if you can able to submit a report containing the practical information on the best way to reach the Mount Everest peak, that is known as knowledge. See, if you see three levels, data just you are talking about the height of the Mount Everest, whereas coming to information which is known as the next level of abstraction, where you are going to provide some inputs about the geographical characteristics of Mount Everest. Then coming to the third word, this is the highest level where practically you are going to acquire the knowledge, you are going to experience how to reach the peak. So that comes only by way of your own experience. So out of that experience, you are going to produce a report which contains the practical information. Then that is considered as knowledge. So that is the difference between data, information and knowledge. Then another like most commonly how we used to differentiate data and information. So data is, as I told you, it is unorganized and unrefined facts which is always in raw as a raw material which do not have any sense. But information is that it comprises processed, organized data and that should be presented in a meaningful context. Then that is known as information. Then coming to data, data is an individual unit that contains raw materials which do not carry any specific meaning. So for example, we discussed about customers sale in a restaurant. If you're talking about is one single customer, only we will provide raw material, nothing else, because so and so person he consumed this food and what is the cost of that, that's it. But it becomes an information when a group of data that collectively carries a logical meaning. So when you are going to consider more than some one or some 10 members or 15 members of customers, a huge mass of customers, then they will decide what is the famous dish in that particular restaurant and which is having the more priority and which is having the least priority. So when you are talking about these two, we used to compare in terms of the quality of the products that is produced by the particular restaurant, in terms of their services. So all these things. So where we are going to provide some meaning which will have some sort of logical thinking. So if whenever you're going to say Paradise Biryani is very good at Hyderabad, so generally people already they will have some sort of information. So whoever will come first time to Hyderabad, they want to taste only biryani. So that type of information they used to provide collective information and which will have a logical meaning. And next difference is that data does not depend on information, but information it depends on data. This is another difference between data and information. The next one is raw data alone is insufficient for decision making. So just like that, you are dumping entire data, whatever you have collected by different sources, that may not be useful to the decision making purpose. So in that case, if you want to make effective decisions, we need information. So their data is of no use. Then an example of data is a student test score. But when you are talking about the average score of a class, in the information is derived in the given data. So that is information. So these are some of the basic differences between data and information. Then what are the different types of data? So basically we will have two types of data. One is primary data, second one is secondary data. So primary data is useful for qualitative research studies, and secondary data already it is developed by someone else, so that may be useful in case of quantitative data. So secondary data is that research works already done by somebody else, so published statistics which are readily available covering diverse fields. So it is not only restricted to only one specific field. Almost in all the fields, we may avail secondary data, which is already published by someone else. So that data we use to analyze our data. It takes some secondary sources, and generally we can use this type of data in case of measuring stock price behavior, to know the interest of the people, even in case of exchange rate, how it is going to change in the current scenario. All these things, for that purpose, we need exclusively secondary data. Whereas second type of data is primary data. So primary data is always original in nature. Directly we used to collect from the respondents. So it is like first-hand information, whatever data you're going to collect. And it is collected by the researcher himself. And this data is always in raw form, unorganized, without making any analysis or processing. So it provides some wealth of information, and this type of primary data generally we used to apply in case of empirical research studies. You want to go with transcripts of interviews, surveys if you want to conduct related to behavioral sciences and all, and sometimes we used to record observations. So all these things they are comes under primary data. So diagrammatical representation I want to discuss how we used to classify sources of data. So there will be two sources. One is primary data source, another one is secondary data source. Primary data source means where we used to have survey method, observation and experimental methods. And coming to secondary data, so already published information, it may be in the form of textbooks, some government periodicals we used to consider related to trade journals, professional associations and business magazines. So like that we used to collect from different sources which is already furnished by other people. So coming to the sources of primary data. So primary data can be collected by different ways. By conducting an experiment, one can collect the primary data which is readily available and which is conducted by the researcher himself. Whereas another method is observation methods. So observations can be done in two ways: by the human, by using some mechanical devices, and next communications. How we do communication means by various sources, like by conducting surveys and by conducting interviews, one can collect the information. So these observations can be done in two environments. One is natural setting, another one is contrived settings, artificial. And coming to communication, surveys or interviews that can be conducted through mail service will be there, and phone or email through we can conduct the survey, and even personal interviews and all comes under another type of primary data sources. The first one is experiments. So experiments, it can be conducted either in artificial setting or natural setting. So in which one has to perform the logical study to collect the data. So it depends. Some we used to collect in the conduct in the laboratories, and some we can able to conduct in natural setting itself, natural environment. So it depends upon the researcher. And these type of sources, they are more suitable for medicines, nutrition, and psychological related studies, where the people they used to conduct number of experiments. And these, the experimenter has to keep control over the influence of any external variable on the results. So always the experimenter, he used to have some control whatever he is going to do in the form of experiments. And if any intervention of any external factors or forces, again that influence the researcher's experiment, which leads to some sort of errors in that. So the researcher will have, the experimenter being the researcher, he has always, he used to keep control and having the keen supervision on the activities whatever he's going to perform in order to collect the information. Then second type of method is known as like survey method. So here survey method generally they used to collect information by developing a questionnaire, or in some cases they used to approach different types of methods. It depends upon what type of survey he has to collect, whether he has to go with personal survey or mailing in surveys or telephonic surveys, and what type, it depends upon the choice of the investigator. Then this type of surveys may be related to a sample survey, or sometimes we may also take the census survey if the number of units are very small in number. So we used to consider all the members or all the items in a particular study. Then the first one is personal survey. So in case of personal survey, they used to have direct interaction with each other. It involves like meeting personally every member who has to be surveyed. So the features of this method is the number of respondents are very limited in size. They should not be very large number of people in case of personal survey. And here the time and cost constraints are also very high, because the researcher has to collect information from each and every respondent. So it is time consuming, even cost also very high, and high accuracy is obtained, because as the researcher is going to collect information directly from the target respondents, so whatever data he is to collect, accuracy should be maintained. That accuracy will be very high, and large geographical area to be covered. So even the number of respondents will be very less, limited in size, and so that he can also able to cover large geographical area, that is possible in case of personal survey, and it is not appropriate method to use. So sometimes it is a good infrastructure of data collection. Why? Because for this we need field force, and a lot of supervision is required, and even the principal investigator should have the control over his sales force. So that also one of the thing. So if he can able to manage well his sales force, and good supervision and control, then it is one of the good infrastructure of data collection. And the availability of skilled interviewers can reduce the interview bias. So just it depends upon the skill and caliber of the interviewer. If he is sound enough, then we can reduce the error that leads to interviewer bias. And questions require spontaneous answers. So in case of personal survey, they never give much time to think and all. So always they need to get spontaneous answers from the respondents. So in such a way, the questions should be formulated in case of personal survey. And next method is mail survey method. In case of mail survey, so this we use to collect information, the communication whatever we used to receive through mail. So here also we need to have a questionnaire, and that should be dispatched. For this, the existence of mailing list is essential, and here also we can contact large number of respondents, because as we are going to send the questionnaire through a mail, so just if you have the mailing address, immediately we can send to large number of respondents. And the cost involved is not very high. Why? Because only cost of mailing. So when you are going to compare with other types of methods, it is proved to be very cheapest method out of all other methods. And the accuracy obtained is not very high. Why? Because response rate is not very high. Only below 20% responses we used to get through mails. It depends upon the interest of the people. And with the availability of fax, internet, or courier facilities, time can be saved. Coming to the sales force size, it required almost negligible. Why? Because as we are going to send it through mail, there is no necessity of any field force, and only people who can read and write. So when you are going to send the questionnaire through a mail, the other people, the respondents, may have a minimum knowledge of reading and writing skills should be there, so that they can able to answer the questions properly. And best suited when the questionnaire is very length. So if it is a lengthy questionnaire, that time it is one of the best method. We can go with mail rather than personal surveys or some other type of methods. And personal questions are certain thought process are best suited. So whenever you want to pose personal questions, and that time instead of asking directly interacting with the person, it is one of the best way to send through a questionnaire through a mail. And next method is telephone survey method. So here the people, interviewer and other person, respondent, they never have direct physical contact with each other. Only voice contact is directly established with the respondents. So the features of this particular method are like this: the number of respondents, they are large, and time and contact them is very less, because in telephonic conversation you should not take much time. So that's how we used to minimize the time, and you can also cover more number of respondents. You can contact very easily. Then cost involved is moderately high. When you are going to compare with experiment method and personal survey, the cost of telephonic survey is high. And skilled telephone operators need to be employed, because it depends upon the telephone operators how they used to connect the people from both the ends, because they used to establish contact with these two people. So telephone operators, they should be skilled, and the accuracy obtained is fairly high. In certain cases it might be higher also. So accuracy, it depends. In some cases, if the line is very clear, whatever information provided by the respondent, that should be recorded clearly, so that we can have accurate information. So if any type of disturbance, again that leads to inaccuracy in detail and faulty instrument it may prove, and that leads to again error. The length of the questionnaire has to be extremely short in this case. So here you cannot uh, mention a long and lengthy questionnaire. It should be short and simple, so that the other person may also respond very fastly, because we need every time through telephonic survey, we need spontaneous answers. So even the respondents also having that ability to communicate and express themselves. So during the telephonic conversation also, people they have to have interest and they used to communicate and express themselves. So that should be there. If they are hesitating to provide some sort of information, again, that may not be useful to the researcher point of view. The skill of the operator or interviewer is largely responsible for the size of bias. So recording the respondents incorrectly. So the entire recording of information, it depends upon the skill of the operator or the interviewer, because they have to record their responses. Otherwise, later it becomes very difficult to analyze the data, whatever conversation happened between those two members. The questions requiring spontaneous answers or a personal nature can be administered over the telephone. So it depends again which type of method they have to go with. The next one is internet survey method. So internet survey method means it is nothing but word of connectivity through internet. So through internet only people they used to connect with each and everyone. There is no geographical limitations. By sitting here, you can cover entire globe. So that is very easy. The people who want to conduct internet survey methods, it has no limitations of geography, and the questionnaires, whatever we are going to use, that we can put through a website, or some forums will be there, some blogs, wikis, and mail groups, etc. Wherever you want, just you need to post in that, so that you will get responses from all over the world, and maybe advertised through network. So it is one of the best way to give some sort of advertisement about your study, about your concepts, and also that many people they may provide necessary inputs to the researcher. And other mode to seek attention of prospective respondents. So if you are going to connect through internet, as the world today, people are revolving around internet. So you can seek attention of more number of prospective respondents, already people those who are doing with the similar type of studies and all. So from them also we can get some sort of inputs that be useful to our study. And modern type of survey it is, and has great potential comparatively than other methods. As we are going to connect through internet, it is not prohibitively expensive. So only internet charge will be there. So remaining nothing will be there. So in that way, it is somewhat less expensive than other methods. Then next instrument is like questionnaire method. Most commonly used survey method. Questionnaire method is also survey method. So where we used to have list of questions. These questions may be of either open-ended type of questions or closed-ended. Again, it depends upon the nature of the problem, and conducted via telephone. Some people may approach mailing survey. Some people they have personal interviews, and some other type of methods. Whichever is convenient to the researcher, accordingly they used to go with different types of methods. Then it is an important instrument in normative survey research, and the purpose of questionnaires in research are twofold. The first reason is that it is useful to collect the information from the respondents who are scattered in a vast area. So if people are not at one place, people they used to scattered from all over the world. In that case, this will be the best method to collect the information and to achieve success in collecting reliable and dependable data. So only we used to send to the prospective respondents. Through them, we can collect information very easily. Then coming to type of questionnaires, there are basically two types of questionnaires. One is structured, another one is non-structured questionnaire. So in case of structured questionnaire means which will have a definite shape and concrete and direct questions will be there. There is no scope for dichotomous or lengthy questions, and no logics should be used in that. It should be arranged in a chronological order. And coming to non-structured questionnaire, They may consist of partially completed questions or statement. What happens if there is? Then that remaining we need to fill. So people should have that thinking process. It takes some time to fill unstructured type of questions. So this is used as the interview guide, which is non-directive, and they possess only a blueprint of inquiries. So just like it's a plan how to carry out a inquiry, and most of the cases, the people now who are going to deal with this type of questionnaire methods, they're free to arrange the form of the questions. So according to their own choice, they may ask the questions in the questionnaires. And second type is like closed form or open form, means open-ended or closed-ended type of questions. So the questions are short or check responses known as restricted or closed form of type. So generally short response means dichotomous answers or responses we used to seek from the respondents, yes or no type of questions. So just they used to say either if they are willing to agree with the statement, they will say yes, otherwise no, that's it. So there ends the job. So that type of questions are known as closed-ended, where we used to have only two types of answers, yes or no. And it restricts the choice of response for the respondents. So further nothing to be filled by the respondent. And it is easy to fill out, it takes less time and keeps respondent on the subject. And more of the cases, it is more objective, more acceptable and convenient to the respondent. So if you ask anyone to say in 2 words yes or no, so saying that is very convenient to the respondent. If you ask them to elaborate why, what is the reason further, so that may not be possible. He feels some sort of inconvenience to answer some type of questions. So in case of closed-ended, they feel very happy, and these type of questions are more acceptable and very convenient to the respondents, easy to tabulate and analyze also. Then coming to the open-ended type, unrestricted type of questionnaire. So in case of closed-ended, the question should be restricted up to certain limit, but whereas in case of open-ended or unrestricted type of questionnaire, they calls for free response in the respondent's own words. So they will ask to fill certain things. So we need to fill in our own words. So the respondent frames and supplies his own response, where we can have the respondent's own responses we can seek in terms of open-ended or unrestricted type of questionnaire. And no clues will be provided by the researcher or investigator, because the respondent himself, he has to generate his own information. So it provides for greater depth of response. So we can see that reliable data we may get from the open-ended or unstructured type of questionnaires. The subject reveals his mind, whatever subject, whatever he want to deliver, whatever is in his mind, that same thing he used to put it on the paper. So this gives a frame of reference, the reasons for his responses. So we can easily get the original facts from the respondent, but this method is very difficult to interpret and tabulate and summarize in the research report, because it is everything on his own. So sometimes people, they may not interpret the data whatever provided by the respondent. This is one of the limitation of open-ended questionnaires. The third one is mixed questionnaire. So it consists of both closed and open-ended type of questions. So generally this mixed questionnaire we can see in case of social research. So this includes both open and closed type of questions, and each type has its own specific merits and limitations. So in this case, the researcher has to decide which type is more appropriate, whether he has to go with open-ended or closed-ended type of questionnaires. So it depends on the choice of the investigator. Then fourth one is fact and opinion questionnaires. So questionnaires of fact. So whatever information furnished by the respondent without any reference to his own opinion or attitude, he will furnish accurate and facts only used to provide in this type of questionnaire. And coming to questionnaire of opinion and attitude, where we used to consider the attitudes, preferences, and choices of the respondents. So that may not be possible in case of questionnaire of fact. The next type is pictorial and verbal questionnaires. So pictures generally they used to promote interest in answering questions. So a pictorial representation is one of the most effective way of providing the information. Just by looking into the picture, people there will have very much interest, and they used to provide answers because nothing can be in descriptive manner. Everything in the form of symbols or some pictures only. So these type of pictures they used in to measure the social attitudes, prejudice in children, illiterate people, because they don't know how to write and how to give read and all. So for those type of people, this is one of the best type of questionnaire which should be expressed in terms of pictures. And selected alternative answers in the form of pictures are given. So the respondent has to take one picture from the given pictures, and useful mostly illiterate and less knowledgeable people. And this is one of the best way of communicating with those people. And the serious limitation of this questionnaire is that it is lengthy and highly expensive also. So printing and all these things, it leads to high cost. And coming to verbal questionnaires, they uses words and numbers only, and this is useful for literate respondents. And next type of primary data source is interview method. So in case of interview, as we know, we will have direct face-to-face conversation with the respondents. This method is slow and also expensive and takes people away from regular work. So whenever you are going to have interview, direct conversation with each other, so it takes some time because the interviewer cannot only record his statements, but whatever the other respondent he used to speak, that also recorded by the interviewer, and he can observe the body language, the non-verbal communication, everything. So each and everything he used to have a keen observation in case of interview method, and hand gestures and everything. So this create lot of meaning than whatever words we used to spoke verbally, and that say makes some sense of each and every gesture, your posture and everything. And the essence of interview is that one mind tries to read the other. So in case of interview, so people they used to read the minds of each other. So that may be possible only in case of interview method. And the interviewer tries to assess the interviewer in terms of aspects studied. So by different people they used to sit in the panel, and few of the people they used to pose questions and others they used to observe the candidate. So accordingly they used to collect the necessary information by way of conducting interview method. And types of interview used in research. So this interview method also further divided into structured or unstructured, direct or indirect. So in case of structured direct interview, so that we can see in case of consumer surveys, there we used to develop a formal questionnaire which consists of non-disguised questions, and these always they try to extract the facts from the people by conducting the consumer survey. Whereas coming to unstructured direct interview, only general instructions on the type of information, whatever you want. So related to that, they will provide some general instructions and necessary direct questions to obtain the information. There is no indirect questions obtained in case of unstructured direct interview, and only the order we used to see whether it should be in a proper order or not. Accordingly, we used to collect the information, and this type of interview methods generally we used in exploratory studies. And third type is structured indirect interview, where the questions are pre-decided and arranged in a structured way. So here, the purpose of the study never revealed in case of structured indirect interviews. And the next type is unstructured indirect interview. So the questions, whatever we used to formulate in the form of questionnaire, that are not pre-decided, and the purpose of the study they used to specify very clearly. And there are other types of interviews also there, like focus group interviews, depth interviews, like that. So it depends again on the choice of the researcher, what type of research has to do with. The next method is observation. So in case of observation, generally there will be three types of process involved in observation. One is sensation, second one attention, and third one is perception. Sensation means whatever the knowledge, whatever we used to gain through the sense organs. So it depends upon, like, it is related with the physical alertness, how alert you are being the observer. So that and all comes under sensation. So it is like receptive to stimuli and get attracted leading. So second process is attention. So attention means we used to concentrate on the things. So it involves a matter of commitment, and willpower is essential, and the adequate training and experience that involved in this attention and concentration, second process. And the third one is like perception. So perception, it comprises the interpretation of sensory reports, whatever the sense organs they used to say, that we need to uh, observe the things as it is, and basing on that, whatever facts we used to observe, it depends upon the perception, enables the mind that recognize these facts. How best you can able to recognize the facts by using your sensory organs. So these three are the part of observation. So observation generally it serves the purpose of, if you want to study the collective behavior and complex social situations, that can be possible with the help of observation method. And we used to following up the individual units that compose of situations. So one can, if you want to study about an individual person, how he used to behave in different situations, that we can do with the help of observation method, and it helps to understand the whole and the parts in their interrelations and getting out the way details of the situation. So all these things possible with the help of observation method. So there are different types of observation: casual and scientific observation. Casual observations without any previous preparation, just like that we used to observe the people, and it is right thing observed at the right time and in the right place. So whatever when it becomes scientific means, if you are doing the observation in a systematic manner by observing the right thing at the right time in the right place, then that is known as scientific observation. So this is carried out with a due preparation, which is done with the help of right tools of measurement, and the people will be experienced and skilled. They can able to work under able guidance, and whatever observations they used to draw, that should be like thorough and accurate data. And next type is like simple and systematic observation. So in case of simple and systematic observation, so generally we used to see this type of things in every research study, and this should be done at the initial stages of exploratory research, and it is not very standardized, and it benefits heuristic nature of exploratory research. The participants who are they are going to participate in this type of observation, they are known as simple observation, and the participants roles, they do not permit systematic observation. So if you are saying to the persons that you are going to observe, no person will allow you to observe. So that is the reason here the participant roles, they do not permit systematic observation. Only the simple observation without any prior intimation to the concerned respondents, one can do this observation studies. So systematic observation employs standardized procedures. The next one is subjective and objective observation. So in every act of observation, there are two components. One is object. Object is that what exactly you are going to observe, and the subject, or it is to whom you are going to observe. So these two are main things in observation process. So one's own immediate experience, that comes under subjective observation. So it is also known as self-observation or introspection. So every person will have this self-observation and introspection so that they can overcome in case of any sort of what you can say, the laggings in their attitudes and all that may be minimized with the help of introspection. And prejudice and biases are generally parts of subjective observation. And next type is factual or inferential observation. So observation may be either factual or inferential. In case of factual observation, the things or phenomena, whatever you are going to observe, with naked eyes are reported. But whereas in case of inferential observation, the behavior or psychological aspects we use to observe about a particular individual or about the group. The next type is direct and indirect observation. So physically present and personally monitors what takes place, then that comes under direct observation. So this is very flexible. The behavior also, it varies from one situation to another situation, and even the observer, they may have free to shift from one place to another, and he may also change the focus of observation. And yeah, rather than there should be nothing well defined or predefined. In case of direct observation, sometimes unexpected events also they used to record. So all these things happen in case of direct observation. Whereas in case of indirect observation, so everything done by some mechanical devices, they used to observe the things whether they are moving in a proper way or not. So that is known as indirect observation. The next one is behavioral and non-behavioral observation. So as pointed earlier, the concept of observation is not only watching but also listening and reading. So everything include in that. So how they used to observe the full range of a person's behavior, they used to monitor your behavioral and non-behavioral activities and whatever conditions where you are in which surrounding, everything uh, monitored keenly, and that should be recorded in case of behavioral and non-behavioral observations. So verbal analysis, linguistic analysis, extra-linguistic analysis, spatial analysis, these are the four major categories of behavioral aspects of observational study. So thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.